Never mind your liver, get to Gino's spot. Gino's spot. Get to Gino's spot. Gino's spot. Have a laugh, have a giggle, and exercise your middle. Have a Gino shot. Gino shot. Get to Gino's spot. Gino's spot. Get to Gino's spot. Gino's spot. Have a laugh, have a giggle, and exercise your middle. Get to Gino's spot. Gino's spot.
Tonight we're going straight in tonight because we've got a jam-packed show. Thank you first of all to our sponsors, to Spa, and then to our live sponsors as well, Sovereign, as we've certainly got them on board recently, and to Fitch and Leeds, who've been with us since the beginning, getting Gino Spot off the ground and keeping it going. Welcome also to our guest tonight, Lloyd Edwards, who's the Raggy Charters. Famous name here in this town as well, and of course Fires van Vuuren, our fast bowler, who seems to have an endless list of guests that he can bring into Gino Spot and always be interesting.
It's always great to be here, and thanks for having me again, Gino, and nice to see you, Lloydie.
Yeah, but
more importantly, we've been talking about this Bird Island thing for a long time.
Bird Island. I'm going to adjust his microphone.
I think I'm right in saying that we can now safely say that other than Mr. Algoa Bay, you're now Mr. Bird Island as well.
The mother of Bird Island.
The mother of Bird Island.
Their mother.
We had National Geographic shooting Shark Week, and they wanted me to read the script, say the script, and the script was they were looking for this big white shark, and they wanted me to say the monster of Bird Island. And I just carried on and I said, the mother of Bird Island. And afterwards they said, Lloyd, that wasn't what you were supposed. I said, well, I'm not saying the monster because it's beautiful. And it's, so yeah.
But just whilst on that subject, I mean, there's so many things. I know you've got to do on tonight. So we don't have a lot of time with Lloydie, unfortunately. But let's just dwell on the great white. You've got the concession now for the cage diving, have you not?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a concession? Is it one concession? One only?
Well, at this point, yeah, one person.
One legal guy
One
only.
legal guy. And the thing is, the white sharks have disappeared from Cape Town, from False Bay. They've disappeared from Gansbaai because those 2 killer whales, port and starboard,
Yes.
have been ripping their livers out. And of course, when that happens, they all just duck.
Correct.
So,
which has happened. We had a
happened.
shark guy on last year when they were all lining up there in Plett, if you remember.
Yes.
And
Yes. We spoke about that
2 or 3 weeks ago, I read about all the sharks that are moving east.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we in the
capitalised
pound seats. If this east wind would stop blowing, we'd be fine.
And tell me, are there big great whites around Bird Island?
There are. We've seen some this year. Yeah.
What sort of size, Bertie?
The biggest one we saw was about 3.6 meters. Huh? Yeah.
What sort of weight would you put to that?
3.6. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. 400 kilos. Okay.
400
And where are you
half a ton?
Where are you conducting the cage diving?
At Black Rocks, there where the seals are.
On the back side of it?
No, on the protected side.
On the protected
Yeah.
side.
So the sharks get there not because we're chumming for them. The sharks get there because that's when the seal pups are
which is
being
now.
weaned, and they learning to swim.
Okay.
And of course they're sitting ducks, and
yes,
these
yeah.
guys just come in and poof. You see it happening often. It's
Horse d'oeuvre.
exploding horse d'oeuvre.
I see Gary's actually said there's a shark video. I think we've got a video here for some of the sharks. You want to have a look at that? I'm not sure who brought it.
Let's have a look.
Let's have a quick
All the
service
inhabitants of our oceans are important. Sharks, once regarded as a scourge by mankind, play a vital role in ensuring that our ecosystems remain balanced and healthy. The docile yet ferocious-looking ragged-toothed shark, for instance, was almost hunted to extinction in certain parts of the world. Like all our marine creatures, they too need to be managed and protected. As time wears on, sophisticated technology, coupled with a burgeoning population, is playing a significant role in slowly denuding the all-important symbiosis that exists between all of our marine creatures. But to what extent? Curious, we decided to delve and examine both the negative and positive influence of man on an environment that is as beautiful as it is fragile.
There we go. She was squid.
What did you say?
It's awesome squid there. We're going up to the coachman. To the coachman.
Are there many times when you go to Bird Island on the shark cage diving things that there are no great whites?
Yeah, it does happen.
Is it?
Yeah. Sometimes they're just not around, and also the season seems to be shifting. So yeah, but we got them. It's only us in Mossel Bay that have sharks. Of course,
Yes.
Plettenberg Bay doesn't have a operator. They're not allowed. So but logistically to get there.
Yeah.
You know what Bird Island's like with clients in those
Absolute
conditions.
nightmare.
It can be a bit tricky, but it's beautiful. And you know what we've learned? We've learned so much from doing this that we saw the guys offloading sharks here the one day from the long lines. I mean, thousands and thousands of sharks. They catch them on, they put these 2 kilometer long cables, whatever how long it is, with the hooks dangling,
Yes.
bait on, and they catch every shark in the area. They say
Great whites included.
Yeah. There has been, yeah. Anyway, and head off, guts in the water, head in the water, fins go to Asia for shark fin soup. There's no nutritional value in a shark fin. Zero. It's just it gives the soup this consistency. That they like. And of course, all the meat goes to Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when I was in Aussie in 2019, I went there and flake and chips, our sharks. South African sharks are getting eaten by Australians. Our sharks are going down the dunny, which is an Australian toilet, fast food toilet, and they're preserving all their sharks, and we trying on. So we petitioned the minister. We got 3,500 signatures, and we got the whole shark long lining thing regulated in our Goa Bay. There's a court case coming up now in December. They caught one of the shark longliners fishing in De Hoop Nature Reserve, our flagship nature reserve. And it wasn't the environmental affairs that caught them. It was us. It was private people with drones, with everything that followed up. So that's coming up, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to come out there about what's been happening. But I've been sworn to secrecy, but we can talk about that.
You've
later.
raised an interesting point. I didn't know that the Hoop was our primary or main.
It's the flagship marine.
Whereabouts?
I would have thought Bird Island would have been.
Well, the Western Cape, they've got. They run the show, don't they? Don't tell anyone about the Eastern Cape. We don't want them here.
Whereabouts is the Hoop?
It's
Cape where?
Cape Town.
Mossel Bay?
No, just between Mossel Bay and Cape Town. Just before Manus,
Okay, but I mean, we've got the most dolphins here. We've got a rich diversity here.
We have,
Well, just to give you an interesting, or to put this into context, you might remember we were very fortunate to have made a few trips to Bird Island 20 odd years ago, and we'd go by helicopter. And on every single trip, I would never get the front seat. I was always in the back of the chopper.
Yeah.
The pilots would say, as we were coming into Bird Island, we'd go over what we began to call Great White Alley.
Yeah.
And the pilot would say, hey, check. And you're like scrambling to have a look.
Yeah.
Looking out the wrong window because you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And there'd be a massive great white tattoo in Great White Alley, which is between Bird and Stag.
Yes.
If you're standing on that jetty that you and I went there with you once.
Yeah.
A jetty that you enabled me to disembark on and
jump on
film
there.
But
Okay.
In that alley, well, in that stretch of water or channel, the chopper pilot would see a great white, and then one or two guys on board would say, geez, I saw it. And I never saw I haven't seen a great white.
But now, just geographically, there's Bird Island. You say Stag Island. What's
Vuuren, Stag? There's 4 or 5 little islands.
Little islands around Bird Island. Okay, small ones, and you go in between them. I mean, it's deep enough.
Well, he's the skipper, but I would assume you come around the eastern side, and then
there's 2 approaches. There's actually 3 approaches, but depending what the waves are doing. And a couple of narrow little ones there. It's
very scary.
Well, we've got Ray Rodocanachi on, and I was very blessed to have gone with the Rodocanachi family on my first trip to Bird Island. And I remember George, as mad as a hatter.
Yes.
On the first trip, when we left the harbour, Miller's was a solid 6 foot. And it was one of those freak December swells. And we had finished playing Northern Transvaal the day before. And Georgie phoned me and he said, we're going to Bird tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's every fisherman's dream.
Yeah.
And we left the harbour and I saw these waves cranking off Miller's and Newwood Beach. And we came in around southwest. Yeah. And I remember seeing these waves breaking off southwest there, like pipeline lefts. Probably 8, 10, 12 foot. And I thought, oh, geez. Luckily, I'm with George. And George had a very good right-hand man, a guy called Willie Ross.
Yeah.
So I felt quite safe being in their hands. Okay. But just prior to that, they tried a similar thing, and we've got Ray Rodocanachi on tonight who will tell you the story.
Yes.
Where they tried to get in troll around southwest, I think, for Yellowtail, and the boat got put on its side. And luckily, George, who had his arm quite badly cut, had the wisdom to get up and push the motors forward to right the boat. So, I mean, the dangers of Bird Island.
Yeah.
These things pop out of nowhere, and
I mean, and obviously the diversity of the wildlife, the fish there, and the penguins particularly. When was that early footage done?
Well, I had it
recent, or just
before we came on the show. I had a chat with to Lloyd about the penguins. So should we go to the penguins? Because Lloyd has got a do on this evening. Very unusually.
Got a big party in 1652, when Jan van Riebeek's men found their eggs to be a delicacy, the onslaught on the little black and white creatures began. Although well cared for today, the populations of African or jackass penguins have over the centuries dwindled greatly.
And that's our the guy doing the talking there, the commentary there is the Squad Cars guy. What's his name?
Malcolm Gooding.
Malcolm Gooding from Squad Cars. Wow. But we get onto the penguins now. Right. So tell us the story.
So when we filmed this stuff, which is about 22 years ago, and we had the chat outside before we started. St. Croix Island had 55,000 penguins. I remember the scientists used to, and they were quite excited about that. So let's talk about the current situation.
Okay. All right. So the penguins have got one huge problem is that they can't fly, and they can't do like gannets can do 400 kilometers to go and look for food. So penguins are stuck to their island. When they've got chicks, they've got to forage close and they've got to feed the chicks. The other important thing about penguins is that they are an indicator species. And that means that they indicate what's happening in the ocean.
Okay.
So if the penguins are going down,
Yeah.
you can study that.
So canary.
Yeah,
in the
but
coal
you
mine.
can't see what else is going down on the islands. So that's very, very important. And they're easy animals to study, and they're very charismatic, and everybody likes them.
Everyone
Okay.
likes the penguin.
So if we can just put that first slide on there, Gary,
Yeah,
of the penguin. So here's a picture that I took in 2000. And in 2000, the population of African penguins was estimated at about 60,000, which we think is a lot. But, you know, there's these shifting baselines. So when I grew up, I saw that many penguins. When my son grew up, he didn't see that at all.
Yeah.
But when my father was alive here, there was probably heaps more. So we've got to put it into a historical perspective. And what we found with the penguins, there were like millions in the 1900s. And the early sailors, luckily for penguins, they don't taste like it.
Okay.
So they ate a couple and they're like, nah, they're not doing that. So they didn't. But what they did, I mean, can you believe this? They would take them, smash their head against a rock, and put them in the boilers with the coal because they were full of fat. And that way they made the coal burn better. So they would you'd put in like half a ton of coal and 10 penguins. Then after that, you know, you had the Israeli wars and the Suez Canal got blocked. And then the big oil tankers then had to change. Instead of going through the canal, they had to come past Cape. And they weren't designed for the Cape waters.
Yes.
Because, you know, out there you've got a current doing 10 kilometers an hour that way, and you've got a wind doing 100 kilometers that way. You get these massive peaks. So these big things broke up, and you got what was called calamatic or I don't know, calamatic something oil spills, where you got sort of millions of liters of crude going into the water, and that killed like thousands and thousands of penguins. It would kill half the flipping thing. And we've actually found what happens. We'll get to bunkering a little bit later, but what happens is oil comes from deep under the Earth's surface, gets pumped up. But oil is made from plankton. That's where oil comes from. Plankton uses oil to float up and down in the water column. All right. So what happens is this is oil from plankton from billions and millions of years ago. It's got a chemical in it called DMS, dimethyl sulfide, and that is the cue that gets penguins to come to the fish. So when zooplankton, the animal plankton, is eating the phytoplankton, the plant plankton that's getting eaten, the plant plankton gives off DMS, all right, which is the same as what you got in plankton. The penguins, we did these experiments with my partner then, Dr. Lorien Pitchegrew. We put different oils. They cue in to where the oil is. So the bunkering here, the minute there's a spill, these penguins are in there because they go to that smell, and then they'll find the fish that are there to eat the plankton. So they're there for the kind of wrong reason, but it works for them. That's the key. So these oil spills kill thousands.
But at the same time, they're getting coated in oil.
Exactly.
While they're trying to feed.
My son was at one of the last spills. They right in there. So that killed a lot of them. So that brought the numbers down. And then what happened in Port Elizabeth? Penguin eggs were more of a delicacy. In fact, you know, the Dozen Island used to have a population of millions of penguins. Today, there's just about none. But in Parliament, on a Wednesday morning, scrambled penguins' eggs was the thing. So no one missed Parliament on a Wednesday morning. And the same thing when those eggs kind of when they'd been taken out, they started coming to St. Croix. And in 1937, there were between 1,000 and 2,000 penguins left on St. Croix. And there was a public outcry. They made it a provincial nature reserve, and the numbers started increasing again until we got to the 60,000 that you saw
20 odd years ago.
20 odd years ago. What happened then was the fishermen on the west coast depleted the fish stocks. So your anchovies and sardines plummeted. They caught everything. Like everywhere in the world, the fishery scientists get it wrong. There's a total collapse and nothing left. And the seabirds, as the fish go down, the seabirds start going down. Obviously, that's it.
Correct.
So that's what started. So then the fishermen switched from the west coast and they started fishing Port Elizabeth. All right.
Well, in fact, Lloyd, am I not right in saying there were 3 gannet colonies on the west coast? I think Possession, Mercury, and Ikuba.
That was off Namibia, yeah.
Off Namibia.
And there was one at Saldanha, there's one on Malgas Island, Gannet Island, which is there, and Lambert's Bay.
And are they all still, well, I know the 3 in Namibia are gone.
Yeah, they kind of still, there's just few of them, but the other ones are gone down. Anyway, so our penguins, so now we got fishing, we got this fishing pressure, which was happening. And if I'll show you the next, if you can just go to the next slide, Gary, you saw what it looked like. That's what it looks like today. So you go 2 slides back, go 2 slides back, and then you'll see one back. Like that's what when I started my tours, that's what it looked like.
We're happy to see you.
Yeah, and if you go 2 slides on, you've got that. I mean,
so sorry, the previous slide, what year was that?
That was 2008. So that was still.
You've gone from early 2000s to 2008 to current.
To current, and that's kind of what you're getting. What you're getting now. So yeah, and if you go on to the next slide, we look at Bird Island, and I took that picture last week. So Bird Island has not been affected. And Bird Island is what you call a control island. So we're watching St. Croix numbers go down, and we're watching Bird go down, but not that bad, or not as much. So what has changed?
Well, let me ask you the question. Sorry to be rude here. Sorry about that. But why haven't they found sanctity then on Bird Island? The St. Croix
Because penguins don't do that.
Not?
No. Well, you get, they do, but not to such a great extent. If they were born there, they will kind of go back there. It's pretty much same with seals.
Yes.
Unless a new colony starts somewhere like Boulders, but generally they stick around. So, yeah.
So just to recap, 60,000 had become 3,000 on St. Croix.
That's right. Yeah. So we're down to 3,000.
And Bird Island is a good.
And Bird Island it used to be like about 5,000. I think that 4.5 somewhere around there. So it has gone down, but not too much.
So what is the reason then for Bird Island doing okay?
Well, here we get. Why?
Gino.
Okay, if you just go to my next slide, Gary, this will show you exactly what happens. Not that one, the next one.
Is that it off the jetty?
That's off the jetty there. Okay, so this is Dr. Lorian Pitchegru's research. This is 2008. So what I was assisting you with that. What
tags?
So what happens is you grab the penguin when it's got chicks. Okay, so it will have nests that will always come back. So you whack on a GPS and you put it back onto the chicks, and it's not going to leave the chicks because it stays there. Then what happens when the partner comes back? It goes out foraging. And if you look at St. Croix, that's the one closest to Port Elizabeth there, you'll see the tracks.
Yes.
All right. Those are the foraging tracks of the penguins while fishing is allowed.
Yes.
And if you look in the bottom section, that bottom right-hand side, you will see that's the total take of anchovies and sardines. And if you see that big circle is outside the harbor. So the boats will just go out, they'll catch there. And I mean, that is 1,500 tons, it's a massive what they're taking. Anyway, so that was what they were doing when the fishing companies were allowed to fish anywhere. So those tracks are about 75, 80 kilometers. Bird Island is pretty much, it's not so bad. They're not going that far.
Yes.
Okay. Then if you look at the St. Croix one, you'll see there's a line running. That's a 20-kilometer radius from the island. All right. And then there's a little circle over Ryebanks.
Yes.
So what happened was the following year, 2009, no fishing boats were allowed to fish within that circle. And Bird Island was the same. They could fish there if they wanted, but Bird is the control.
Yeah.
Let's see what happened when fishing was banned in that circle around the island. Look at their tracks.
Jeez.
See that?
Oh,
Unbelievable.
yes.
Okay, so now there's less effort going into the
Yeah.
penguins,
Yeah.
less energy spent.
Yeah.
They're bringing more fish back for their chicks, and the chicks obviously have a higher chance of fledging.
Okay.
Bird Island is the control. In science, you've got something called
Yeah.
a control.
Yes.
You can see nothing's changed. So it's not that the sea conditions have changed, or there's more fish or less
Yeah.
fish or what have you. It's pretty much the same. That can totally displays the fact that it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
stop fishing close to the
Correct.
islands, the penguins are going to make it.
Yeah.
And that was a study since 2008. And the fishery scientists would not buy in. They were saying, no, there's other factors. The scientists here weren't allowed to say overfishing. It was a rude word. They couldn't say
Oh,
it.
really? Okay.
And they've only now has the minister stepped in and said, stop fighting. I mean, the two groups are just about killing each other. Said, right, now no more fishing.
Okay.
So we've got I think it's about a 4-year or something. I'm not exactly sure.
Around the island.
Yeah. Okay.
20 Ks around
So
the
now,
island.
yeah, 20. So that's been done. So now, why are St. Croix numbers still dropping?
Good
If they're
question.
not at Bird.
Good question.
And
What's your theory?
well, we've been fighting
Say
this
it.
for a long time.
Say it,
Is
because
that
if you don't say it, I'm going to say
so
it.
what's happening in the bay now? We've had for the last 6 or 7 years, we've had ship to ship fuel
Bunkering.
transfers. You've
Yeah.
had this fuel being transferred. Now, I agree there's money to be made, but that money is not coming into our economy.
Yeah.
The biggest money coming into our economy is tourism.
Yeah.
And marine tourism. So we're flicking the dice here, or some people are making this money on bunkering,
Yeah.
but it's not coming back. And you know what? They never did an environmental impact assessment to see if bunkering should be done, because they called it a grey area,
Yeah.
because it's never been done.
So hang on a second, Lloyd. Who's making the money?
Exactly.
No, well, who is? Who is?
Who is? There's
I don't
obviously
know.
some consortium of businessmen.
Here we
Why
go.
do you think SARS has impounded 5 or 6 of the bunker barges? Because that money is not coming into the economy. It's
No
not
tax.
coming into South Africa.
Okay.
It's getting
Thank you.
it's
You've
going
answered that
elsewhere.
question.
And we've got to look after our marine resources, because this is the future
Absolutely.
of tourism. This is what people are coming here. And now this population just keeps on going down.
Yeah.
Every year it gets, you can see, we took carte blanche there. Shame, bless his soul. Derek Watts.
Derek Watts.
He said this is a tomb to the African penguins. It's a tombstone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And it is.
Yeah. So anyway, so the only
bunkering is
one
one thing.
is bunkering. And you know
then-
what? The only way that you stop something like bunkering is through legal efforts. You know, you can say what you want, you can have pictures in the newspaper, we can talk about it, but until you take them to task legally,
Put the petition out there.
but you
Well,
need
we-
more than
I
that.
think we did something. There was last time there was a push to at least stave off the legislation or something, wasn't it? It was going to be opening. They were going to let them do more bunkering.
Well, yes, we got that stopped. Well,
Yeah.
not us, but we did do legal. Sandcob, the coastal rehabilitation of penguins. They're very strong, and they've got a lot of bird life. South Africa and all those guys are all
Yes.
involved. But we all kind of put in our bits
Yes.
with, and we stopped them getting new licenses issued. There was a moratorium.
Mm.
And now these boats have been impounded. So I'm not sure where we're going to go, but we're following it closely. And we have to stop it.
Well, they're not allowing them in Cape Town. They're not allowing them in Durban. So they're just coming here to camp. That's what I see. Whenever you look out in the ocean, there's like 10, 12 huge ships out there.
Correct.
And they're all just there because they're bunkering. They're not there to bring us money.
No,
They're not there
at
to
all.
trade with us.
That money doesn't come
They're
in
not-
here.
And then Mendes has given us a fantastic stat.
Mm.
20 years ago, and I remember when we started filming on Bird Island in 2001, Norbert Klages, you might remember Norbert
Yeah,
well.
of course, yeah.
Dr. or
Took him
Professor
out there,
Norbert.
mad as a hatter.
Yeah,
Bless
lovely
him.
guy.
Yeah.
I remember him telling me Bird Island's got 55,000 penguins. They're going to build the harbour. Penguins are going to go.
Yeah.
Now, Lloyd's just proved it. They're 3,000 out of 60,000 in 20 years. That's 57,000 penguins less.
Gone, yeah.
Yeah.
And where have they gone? They haven't. I asked him the question. Why didn't they go to Bird Island?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So
it's very sad, in fact.
I mean, I know Arnold Slavitt was on a little while ago. He talks about the fact that the seagulls are also chowing the penguin eggs. I mean, what's your thought on that?
I've got.
What's your thought on that?
The seagulls.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can tell you what happened on Bird Island.
Yeah.
We were getting a lot of predations on the penguin eggs, and I mean that the gulls would pick them up, eat them, and then drop them. It was littered. So I said to my partner at the time, I said, "Oh, we'll start shooting them."
Yeah.
No, you cannot do this. I said, "But obviously, no. We'll do some research."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what are you going to do? So they got the rangers, and every day they counted how many penguin eggs. And eventually, at the end of the season, there was like, I can't remember, 12,000 penguin eggs.
Yeah.
Okay, that couldn't breed.
Yeah.
And then after all of that, okay, now we're going to start shooting the gulls that are taking the eggs. So they started shooting.
Jeez.
You know how many eggs we found the next year? 3. So then she writes a paper up, okay, and that was then used. She says, "You see, this is how science works. You do this and you do that and you monitor it. Now that can be used in other areas where you've got problem gulls." We saw a bad thing at Bird last week. We saw a seal predating on a gannet, ripping its stomach open and taking the fish.
Tells you a story,
Yeah, so that, you get these rogue seals that start, and once they start and they see it's quite easy, they don't stop. It happens. I've seen that.
It's like port and starboard with the great whites.
Exactly.
Once that starts, it doesn't. I mean,
okay. Lloyd, it's been good having you.
Always a pleasure to see that.
Thank you very much.
When you got a Bird Island,
I behaved myself. I didn't say the F word once.
Not yet.
Okay,
Lloydie,
all right.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure, guys.
Great to see you, my man.
Thanks. Fires, and we've got another guest coming on.
Cheers,
I think we need to get Davey in here.
Thanks, Nate.
I think we need to get Davey Smell in here.
Yes, Dave Smell. We're talking about the wreck of the Doddington. Is that right?
Yeah, part of the history of Bird Island.
The British East India ship, the Doddington, en route from England to Madras in India, crossed Algoa Bay. Oblivious to the inaccuracy of Dias's early maps, which depicted the African coastline to cut away rapidly to the north, the ship, amidst a great storm with 270 people aboard, sailed headlong into Bird Island. "247 people perished. 23 men were washed ashore."
All right.
Davey Smell.
The Doddington. Davey, we're going to get Dave on. You can see
Davey, how are you, my man? Haven't seen you since 1980 or about or thereabout.
Yo.
How are you, Dave?
Yeah, that's right about that. Yeah, very good, man.
Now, Davey, to move on to the chapter that you very kindly given us your time for, which is an integral part of the Bird Island history. The Doddington, 1755. 23 survivors lived on that island for 6 months. And I think I'm right in saying that for many, many years, people believed that the Doddington had hit a reef a kilometer or so off the island. Until you guys rocked up there in about, 1977, was it? Tell us the story.
78. Yeah.
78.
Well, originally there was a pinnacle sticking out, low tide, high tide. You didn't see it very well, but there was a swirl around there, white water. But it was about 90 foot deep, and it was about 900 meters from the island, almost a kilometer from the island. And they've been going down there since 1755. I think there was a team that came quite soon after it went down. I suppose they were after the gold. But they kept going down with their rudimentary equipment, like they had barrels, and they'd lower themselves down in barrels with weights. But anyway, for many, many years until Dave Allen and Jerry Fanica, they recruited me. I was a surfer. I was at Avalanche pretty much many more days than I should have been.
Were you a student at the time, Davey?
And then Dave came to recruit me. And then I went up to the Sacramento. They took me to the Sacramento a few times. Never actually dived, but was on the trawler to observe them pulling up cannons, etc. So that's where it all started. And then they groomed me into thinking that I was going to be a bucky boy. In other words, I knew the surf. So I was able to take divers in and out of the break. Unlike most stories about wrecks, people always think they just sink in the middle of the ocean, but the majority of them actually hit something. So basically, Dave had gone to Lloyd's of London and had pulled out a whole lot of survivors' accounts. And then them knowing and us knowing, but Dave and them were the ones that came to the conclusion, the activity of the wind and the currents, and they were professionals. They've been in the water. So they figured out from one of the survivors' accounts, that it was 20 minutes from when the boat hit to it landed, it hit against the island, spilt its guts. And they figured out they could never have come from Doddington Rock in 20 minutes. So they figured out by the wind direction that they were, the wind direction, it must have hit one of the reefs on the island and swung around. Correct. So based on that information, before they even got in the water, they found it within about 10 minutes. So while they were looking for it, I was.
The book says that you were the guy who discovered
it. Dave and Jerry were the ones that were. They didn't want me. I was supposed to be the bucky boy. So after they found it, they came rushing back, but they'd given me a shark banger and 2 aqua lungs to go and just get used to being under the water. My first dive I'd ever had in my life was in a swimming pool in PE. The second dive was in the harbour in PE. My third dive, I'm trying not to use the F word. My third dive was under the Etosha trawler by myself with a shark banger, just swimming around, getting used to the idea of breathing underwater. And then they said to me, sorry, you're not going to be the bucky boy, you're going to dive. So the next dive we did, they took me onto the wreck site. So that was my 4th dive I ever had in my life. I was doing professional marine archaeology, as they say. Yeah, that was interesting.
Davey, there's a lot of mystery attached to the salvaging of the Doddington because, number one, you kept it very secret. And number 2, if I'm right in saying, you guys had chartered a trawler by the name of Etosha, if I'm not mistaken. And
Etosha, yeah.
And in those days, the harbour closed at 10 o'clock at night, and you guys would sneak in there at 10:30 and then take all the gold and the cannon and whatever else to a mystery site. Now, tell us about that, because this has always intrigued me about Bird Island.
Yeah, there wasn't much of it. Was Dave Allen's father in Warmer. That's where basically we took everything, but from the Sacramento. But there wasn't much gold at all.
The gold
trust
story?
me, I was there.
The Doddington
gold. The gold. We were after the gold. we were after the gold.
So it's still there.
But what happens? Yeah, probably. What happens with gold? It works its way to the lowest point, and because of the nature of the metal. So there were a lot of big potholes around the wreck site, and they could have been anything up to 6 foot deep. And the fact that we could only get in on average 2 days a week means we could have been working our butts off unloading one of those potholes to get to the gold. We'd get halfway. Then we'd have to finish the dive for the day. Then the next time we could get in was maybe 3-4 days, a week later. Then all the rocks had been through the activity of the ocean. All the rocks and boulders had filled it up. So it was almost impossible to empty those. And so we found a watch cover. Jerry and I both went off the side of the Avon, and we both spotted this gold watch cover just lying on the top of the the reef there. And we both shot down to try and grab it first, but there was that. There were a couple of little chains, but unless Dave and them was sticking them somewhere, but I doubt, because Jerry and I did a lot of the diving. So there wasn't much gold at all. Yeah. Nice idea. But the silver coins, the pieces of 8 and ducatoons, that's what I found. I discovered I was swimming through a little gully, and I just put my thumb onto a little disc that was sticking out the side of the rock. I snapped it off and saw a silver. I called Jerry over. Then we recognized they were actually silver coins. So we ended up getting, I think, about 20 kilos of those. But most of the activity was loading the copper ingots. We went there over two separate sessions for about 6 months at a time. The second time, we found a lot of those coins and 4 cannon. There were 4 cannon we pulled up. And a lot of the time we were loading copper ingots. We were making nets on the island when the weather was crap. And then we also discovered 2 other wrecks. One was I can't even remember the name. You might know. There was a tug from the Second World War. Era 1939. It went down. It was completely intact. And then there was another ship that wrecked. It was carrying ammunition for the Boer War.
Yes.
So we dug that up. We dug a few. What's that?
I read about that today. Dug up a whole lot of bullets, did you not?
Bullets.
Some bullets or something.
Yeah. The cases were encased in a conglomerate, so they were protected. So the wood was still there, but it was very delicate. So we had to dig all the way around it and sort of bring it up to the surface and then keep it in water until they could preserve. I didn't see much after that what happened to them. I think they took them back to PE. But the tug, we went on to quite a lot, because that was in about 60, 65 foot of water on a protected side of the island. So that was when the weather was crap. We used to go and scratch around. And there was cutlery, plates. It was still totally intact. And we pulled all the portholes off. And I got one, which I don't know what happened to it. But it had my age on it. It was porthole number 23. And that was my age at the time. So I thought that was quite cool.
and Davey, tell me,
that was a mad experience.
Yeah. What sort of depths did you find the majority of the Doddington treasure in?
Depending on the tide, it was shallow. Depending on the tide, it was 15 foot, maybe. When the tide went very low, it would go as low as 10 foot, then up to 17, 18 foot, maybe 20 foot, depends on what part of the site you're on. And so, I spent a lot of time on that side, I tell you.
And am I right in saying?
But it was pretty shallow. Like I said, it's a myth that boats just sink in the middle of the ocean. Most shipwrecks are hitting something, and invariably landmass.
Well, that's the point I wanted to raise. So, are we right in saying that boat sailed into Bird Island itself, and you discovered it?
Yeah,
as I understand
it would have come in at a certain direction. It was coming in. It would have hit a reef, one of the reefs over where we used to catch perlman. And then it swung around. Then it hit that reef, and it swung around, and then smashed up into that site where we found it, basically.
Yeah. And Davey, the flotation or getting the cannon off the bottom, how did you guys do that?
Winches. We had winches, had nets. We used to sit on our days off. We used to sit and weave these big, thick nylon rope nets, and that's what we used to pull the ingots up with. And obviously the cannon could be levered into those and pulled up as well. The trawler was a fishing trawler, so it had a normal winch that they could use for hauling stuff onto the boat.
Ingots of what? Jesus.
What's that?
Ingots of what?
Copper.
Copper ingots.
Copper ingots.
You know,
I think we got, I think it was almost 26 tons. 26 tons of copper we pulled up.
Jeez, like you should have waited
Yeah.
until today to sell that
So
stuff.
we spent most of our time groveling looking for copper.
You could have
Yeah, with it,
flooded
you know,
the market with copper and saved us a lot of hassle with our street lights. Jeez.
Yeah, we could have left the copper out for the people to steal instead of our wiring.
There's just recently.
But most of the artifacts went into PE museum. It all went into PE museum. We had to, in order for us to claim the site. Yeah, I don't know. You know, Dave was quite a sneaky one, and he could have. I think they came back. They might have gone back to Bird Island. Yeah, I know they went back to Bird Island.
Yeah,
supposedly to go and find more gold, but we know what happened there.
Yeah. And Danny, now, I believe, looking at the book written by Jeff Allen, you were quite harassed there by a great white.
Yeah.
Were you harassed by the great white?
We had a great white that used to. The thing is, we knew then, because of our diving, what people know now about the shark population. Yes. And Dave, for the sake of ego, used to like the idea of catching them and killing them. And I hated it because I think it's in there. I knew even then apex predators are not what you want to be trying to eliminate out of the ocean or anywhere for that matter. But so we used to catch them. We used to have a rig, have one of those big orange buoys, and then we'd have maybe about 10 foot of chain with a massive hook on. Then attached to the top of that hook was another 3 or 4 tuna hooks, we used to call them. And then the seals used to come from BlackRock. Is it called BlackRock's, eh?
BlackRock, correct.
So that's the company that now owns Ukraine.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so the seal, if there was a sick seal, they'd come onto the island and we'd shoot them, and then we'd cut the meat up and we'd put them onto these big shark hooks. Then we'd have about another 100 foot of nylon rope with a chunk of lead on, not an anchor. Because if the shark took the bait, it would run with it. So you couldn't have an anchor to rip the whole rig up. So that's how we used to catch them. Within about 20 minutes, because the hook's in the mouth, they couldn't breathe. So they couldn't, essentially they'd drown because they couldn't force the water through their gills and get oxygen. So with a big hook in their mouths, they essentially drowned quite quickly as well. It was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We used to pull them up the side of the boat.
And just going back
and then, it was my job.
Yeah, carry on. I beg your pardon.
Do the what?
Carry on, David.
Yeah.
No, carry on. It was your job.
we had shark bangers that we sort of custom made with 7.62 rounds, which were our military standard R1 or R4, whatever they were at that time around. So we made these custom ones, and we'd have to the shark between the eyes. It's a triangle between the back of the head and the eyes. Is where you'd get them right in the middle of that, and that was the brain. And you'd kill them instantly. So we used to pull them up. They were exhausted. Pull them up the side of the boat and pop them with a 7.62, and then drag them onto the boat. But we used to eat. I made sure we ate them. Very tasty. Very much like yellowtail.
Well, we don't want people eating sharks now.
No, they're not.
That's the bad old days.
Well, we have a different taste. They're not great to eat. But now, David, tell me a story. You went there.
Rather than just chuck them back into the water.
Yes,
sure. We ate them.
Or get chucked back into the water yourself.
Yeah, gee whiz.
But
but we basically they had a lot of uric acid in the flesh. So in order to eat them, you'd have to. It's kind of the same as the bloodline you get on the game fish. That's very sort of uric acidy, and so we used to soak it in salt water overnight, and then that would sort of take a lot of the uric acid out, and then it was edible. We used to cut it up into pieces, freeze it down, because food wasn't that readily available on the island. We were there over a year, 2 6-month periods.
I was going to ask you.
So we had to be. I was the one that was cooking most of the time. But
and
what's that?
What was life like on the
island? Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have, obviously there's no TVs, no cell phones, but it's not like there was no such thing as cell phones, so it's not like we felt we were missing anything. The weather was often bad, so we would only be able to get into the water to work maybe, like I said, about a couple days a week on average, sometimes one. So there was a lot of time, a lot of reading, a lot of fishing.
Yes.
We used to go out specifically to fish as well, because we also needed food for ourselves, and we were building up stocks for when the helicopters, the railway guys coming to service the lighthouse.
Yes.
There used to be about half a dozen of them used to come out with about 2 tons of brandy, and then they probably finished doing their duty and servicing the lighthouse in the first 4 or 5 hours, and then they'd be out there for like a week, 2 weeks, fishing and getting wasted. And then sometimes I'd go back to PE. They'd send me back on a helicopter to PE to go party, because I was 23 years old and I was being deprived.
I remember you well, Davey. I remember you well. I know you like to party. Lily's, you would mention stuff.
Still do.
And Davey, just for what it's worth,
I'm lucky to be alive when I got up to Los Angeles.
Where exactly does that wreck lie?
Where exactly?
I want to hear it from you. Where exactly does the wreck lie? It's right up against the island, is it not?
Yeah, I'm trying to picture the layout. It's a long time ago. Pretty much in front of the lighthouse.
Well, you say in front.
You know
of
where
lighthouse,
the Gannet colony?
Side. Yep.
Yeah. The others, where the Gannet colony. If you're like looking at the lighthouse from the back of the island, there's a Gannet colonies on the left, and then there's the lighthouse kind of in the center. If you went straight over, more to the right, that's pretty much where it is. Yeah.
Okay. I know.
It's kind of on the corner.
Yes.
Why you want to go down there and scratch?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'll tell you why I ask you the question. I've had a dive there with the late Norbert Klages, and he was saying to me, "Here's the Doddington below us here in a gully." It was basically just out of a gully behind the lighthouse on the PE side of the lighthouse, and I wasn't comfortable on that dive because I knew what these oaks had encountered.
Yes, with the sharks.
I'd read their book about. Didn't you call that shark Alfred? The shark got given
Alfred.
a name.
He was 15 foot. He was a 15-footer. Yeah.
Wow.
When we got into the site in the morning, it was usually around about 9:30, 10 a.m. He was still there. And he never used to come near us. They'd come and have a look, but because we were invariably working, fanning conglomerate to clear stuff away, to find bits and bobs and coral beads and stuff, there was quite a lot of sediment in the water. So he would not come too close to us because it would get into the gills and stuff. So, but he was quite passive. But around about 11 a.m., 12 a.m., he'd go out to sea to eat, to go and get food. And then they'd come back if we were still in the site around 3, 4 o'clock. He would come back.
You were on the 5 o'clock venue.
After a while, we were quite familiar, and we weren't nervous about getting in the water at all. We'd be on the rubber boat. We say, "Oh, there's Alfred." Then we jump in and carry on doing our work. And what we've discovered is if they knew, the sharks knew you were aware of them. In other words, if you swam up to them, then they would pull back. So in other words, if they thought you didn't know they were around, then they could attack. But if they knew you were aware, it was quite weird. We knew we had this quite a close thing with him. He was as long as our Avon, was about 15 foot. And he never buzzed us. We had other sharks buzzing us when we were in deeper water.
Yeah.
But he never did. Mm.
David, that's
Davey.
amazing, man. And incredible stories.
Wonderful.
And what an experience to actually find the Doddington and go and take up all the loot and the ingots.
And I took
David,
nothing.
thank you.
Funnily enough, I was quite reluctant. I was a surfer, so this to me were the divers, the diving crowd in P. I didn't think were very cool, not as cool as us. So diving wasn't the thing that I was into.
Yes.
So I was reluctant about it almost all the way through. Yeah, and then when later on in life, when I thought back of that experience, that was one of the most incredible things I could have ever got involved in my life. Then it morphed into coral diving, because David and them kept the coral diving under wraps until they felt they could trust me, I suppose. And then from that, when we got back to PE for a good few years, I worked with them, and particularly on the coral, making coral jewelry, and until I had enough of that lot.
Yeah.
Schoenmaker's Kop, we used to spend a lot of time out there.
Yes.
But I had my experiences with Dave and Jerry. I'm in contact with Jerry. He's somebody that would remember a hell of a lot more than me. I don't know if you've spoken to him. Have you spoken to Jerry?
20 years ago.
We have to find him.
20 years ago. Couldn't find him. Where is he now? Still in Port Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah, he's living in Jeffreys Bay now. I'm in contact with him.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a lot of. He's given me a whole lot of slides, and from those days, I've got some. We just wrote a book here as well, and so we put a lot of the content of Bird Islanders in. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you a message for Jerry's number. I'd love to see him. I last saw him 20 years ago. We did an interview with him. Great guy.
The video, is there a video on the
Yeah, no, it's lovely. I was very close to him. Yeah, boy.
Wonderful guy.
Jonathan.
Wonderful guy.
That's it.
Great talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Okay, my brother.
There's a little video. We're going to close out for you with a video, and we're going to get our new guest on. Thanks for coming in, Dave. It's fantastic.
Okay, mate. Cheers, man.
I don't know if that's working or not. That video doesn't look like. No, it's not. But we've got one more guest to come in as well. Ray Rodocanachi come through.
I think what we need there is the topography.
We're talking about the food. We're talking about the fishing with you.
Well, we're going to talk about the fishing and the species. Hello, Ray.
Gino. Good. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
It's all good. Well, second time you've been on as well. I think you were in the wings with your dad.
That's it.
Talking about fishing, and I know that's Mike's first love. Yeah, the fishing.
Absolutely. And I must just say, and it was great to have Lloyd on, but the whole itinerary got a little bit tossed around tonight. Correct.
Yes.
And we were originally going to start with Ray.
Yes.
Talking about the trips to Bird Island and why we're actually talking about tonight's show.
Yeah.
So the batting order's been turned around.
Yes, that's fine. Normally the opening batsman now.
Number 11, you batting number 1. Or normally number 1, you batting number 11 tonight. But be that as it may, as I was saying to you earlier, I had the privilege and I would say the honor of being invited to Bird Island with the Rodocanachi family.
Yeah.
And we have a video. I think we have a video clip, if I'm not mistaken, about how the island was actually formed. And what is intriguing about it is the fact that it was once part of the African mainland.
Yeah.
And after the last ice age, it filled up. and there are areas. If you look at a profile of the island, there's shallow areas and these huge drop-offs, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, because I know you were very astute about the readings on your dad had the most sophisticated technology. So let's just understand what went on around Doddington and Southwest Reef.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. So we generally leave the harbour every single morning. As you know, it would normally crack at dawn. In fact, you mentioned leaving almost in the middle of the night. In summertime, we used to get up at 3 a.m., be at the harbour and leaving by 4 so we can get to Bird Island. You're on your way there, the sun is rising up. And my dad used to keep the fish finder on to basically mark the bottom. For him, it was about, while we're riding, maybe you see a reef, you can stop and you might catch fish, discover new reefs. And we used to ride. So we used to see the profile of the bottom coming up to Bird Island. So when you start getting close to Bird Island, the water is sort of 80 meters deep on average. You're coming off the southwest grounds, it drops a little bit, and you have this sort of flat plateau almost coming into Bird Island. And when you get close to Bird Island, obviously about a mile and a half, it will come up to about 70 meters. And then when you get close to Southwest Reef now, if you can picture in your mind, you're heading from PE towards Bird Island. On your left-hand side, you've got the coastline. You've got Black Rock, as everybody knows, so the first island that you come into. And maybe half a mile, 3/4 of a mile out to sea, there's a little point of a rock that sticks out. We used to call it Southwest Reef. That's actually where the incident happened with my dad and his boat.
Okay, right. Yes.
So we used to ride towards Southwest Rock as our first stop always. And you ride through there.
Sorry, Ray. Sorry to interject. So from Port Elizabeth, the line would be Southwest Reef.
We'd ride straight towards Southwest Reef. And as you start getting closer, then you see the bottom will go from 70, 68, 65, 60, and all of a sudden it will start climbing as you get closer.
So if you imagine a profile, if you drew a profile of the land from the mainland of Africa, you'd have this gradual getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So if there was no water there, and then suddenly you'd have this huge peak, like a lady's slipper, I would imagine.
It comes out of nowhere where it will rise up, and over a space of a couple 100 meters, it'll go from 60 meters to 28, 25 meters. So it's quite a steep incline. And that's the edge we used to fish on. And always early morning was our first stop. And that's where we start. We'd start fishing there. And from there, then we'd move over and go to different spots depending on what we want.
And the species, Ray?
It's probably the most diverse area of fish in our area. I was just doing a little bit of a jot down today of the species to find in. You'd have white musselcracker, black musselcracker. You'd have red steenbras. We'd have red Roman, Miss Lucy, Basterman, some places, Daggerhead, Scotsman. There were just so many species of reef fish in that area.
And cob, I remember one day, sorry to interject, I remember one day catching my first Scotsman and seeing this fish come up, the most beautiful fish you could ever wish to see. And then we moved closer to the island, and we're going to come back to this in a jiffy. And we were catching cob. The island was right here. Yet you go and stand on the side of the island, you don't catch a cob. And here we are.
Exactly.
100 meters off the island, on his dad's boat, catching cob. Nice cob too.
Yellowtail is the most prolific species there, and the most numbered fish and the prize fish that everybody goes for to Bird Island. But in between, there's all these other species. In the wintertime, we used to keelback. We used to get cob shallows and deep water, depending on whether it's summer or winter. I can remember at times we used to, if it was a calm day, we used to drift in the shallows. And we used to get Scotsman, we used to get Red Roman, we used to get the occasional daggerhead, Basterman, red steenbras. All these fish in those reef shallows would come up. And from there, you maybe go to the deeper sections, just on the other side. Now, you mentioned the Doddington wreck. Just out to sea, there was another rock, and they call that Doddington.
Yes,
And
that's where they believed that ship had.
Okay, they thought that it was there.
Yeah,
Correct.
and
Hence the name.
And from there was another drop off to the other side of the island, and we used to go fish there. And that's where Mr. Athlete here. Can I tell that story? We go fishing.
Definitely.
He comes with us and he says, I can pull yellowtail all day for a living. He says, I'm a big, strong, fit athlete. I can do this all day for a living.
Yeah.
My dad says, come.
Buckled.
We go out and we go out to the reef. I think we call it 6 Mile Reef, if I remember
The
correctly.
island was right there.
We go to 6 Mile Reef and we stop and we go down, and it's a little bit quiet in the beginning. Next thing, Mike's into a big yellowtail. Now he starts pulling and he's huffing and puffing, gets it up.
He's a strong.
Gaff fish, put it in. Okay, yeah, that wasn't too bad. Bites up, goes down. In interim, couple of hours, us catching other fish, but smaller fish, 4 to 8 kilos. His fish was probably about 15 kilos. It was a big fish. Mike goes down again. He just his bottom, bang, into another big fish. Yeah, and Mike is pulling up, and he's pulling, and you can see he's now starting to take strain. Gets the fish to the top, gaff fish, put it in. Mike's sitting in the corner. He used to sit in the back corner of the boat, and you see him taking his time with the bait, trying to take his time, goes down.
Broken.
He barely hit bottom, and he's into again another big fish. If I recall, the third fish was 16 kilos. It's actually a bit of a monster.
It was a fantastic day. I remember that.
Halfway up, this big man was on his knees, holding onto the rod, trying to get that fish up. Needless to say, after that third fish, he actually apologized and said,
Correct.
I apologize. No, yellowtail are strong. They're beautiful fish to catch.
And yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Sorry, Ray, the incident with your dad going inside Southwest.
So I wasn't on the boat that day, but I remember my dad telling me the story vividly. So they used to troll around Southwest Reef because you used to get a lot of yellowtail there. So one of these particular days, the boat was actually Sea Princess. I don't know if you remember Sea Princess.
Pictures of it.
Yes, absolutely.
They were trolling around there, and my dad was in the back, and somebody else was actually behind the wheel steering. And my dad said, "No, take a wide berth around the island. There's big waves. Watch what you're doing. Be careful." And my dad's at the back busy fixing up tackle and getting things ready.
Yeah.
And obviously, this particular guy, and I won't mention names,
Yes.
he kind
Mention
of
the name.
No,
he,
not
he,
bringing any more
he
names.
kind of lost focus a little bit on where he
Okay,
was,
okay.
and then got a little bit too close. Now, like Mike said, those breakers can come up
Wow.
12, 15 foot,
Yeah.
curling
Probably.
over,
Properly.
and a big wave hit the side of the boat, and the boat literally flipped onto the side. And when it hit the side of the boat, actually hit the skipper's side of the boat, which at that stage was the right-hand side of the boat.
Yeah.
And it smashed the window out. Everybody went to the side. Stuff went overboard, tackle, bait, whatnot. Fortunately, no one went overboard.
Yeah.
And this whole incident happened. Now, the wave went over in the boat. It was still on the side.
Yeah.
My dad recalls that you could hear the motors basically idling out of water. They become
Yes,
very
yes.
loud when the exhaust is out.
Okay.
So it was idling. So the boat was coming back slowly. My dad looked up and he saw the next
Another
one
wave.
coming.
Oh, my soul.
And he went and ran towards, and he shoved his hand on the throttles to push the throttle forward.
Yeah.
And as he did that, the first motor caught a little bit right at the boat, second motor caught and pushed the boat out.
Oh,
But in doing so, because the window smashed,
yeah.
he got a piece of glass straight up his wrist over here, which when you came back, you actually go to hospital to have it cut out and suture.
But he righted the boat.
That
Jeez.
putting all that
Okay,
right at
right at
the
the
motor
boat.
caught right at the boat, pushed it through,
soul.
and the guys were lucky enough to get
Yeah.
out before the next wave hit them.
Unbelievable.
And that's the dangers of
So
the
the
sea.
other-
You know,
yeah,
Well, the danger of Bird Island.
Yeah.
Bird Island has always had this his father possibly painted this picture of this dangerous place. And I remember we went there, we arrived there in the middle of the night one night.
Yeah.
And it was not all hands on deck, all eyes and ears on deck.
Yeah.
Listen for the breaking waves.
Yeah.
And Jesus, you're shitting yourself because, and believe me, the great white population is different.
Yeah, for sure.
There was silence on this boat. I mean, it was one particular night we went there. It could have been the night before we hit all those big yellowtail.
Yeah.
But it's always had Bird Island has always had this. I mean, there's stories of ghosts.
Well, isn't it? I mean, in the early history of this place, I mean, I'm sure that they must have landed there. Didn't the Portuguese land there as well before they?
No, the first people who lived on that island were the 23 survivors of the Doddington.
Okay.
That Davy
and was that 1700? When was it?
1755.
1755.
They lived there for 6 months.
That was and also the Squinny's one, the
Sacramento.
The Sacramento was
those. I think.
That was 16. No, that was 16. It was 100 years. 100 years before.
Yeah, 1755. Excuse me. The Doddington ran aground, and what was interesting, talking to Davy, they discovered the wreck right up against the island.
Yeah.
Whereas a kilometer and a bit off the island, there's a submerged reef that was called Doddington Rock. Okay. So people believed that the Doddington had hit that rock, K off. Then Davy Smale's gang here went to London and researched the diaries. And here comes the real story about Bird Island.
Yeah.
They researched these diaries, and 3 of the survivors kept diaries.
Yeah.
And they said, in the days after the actual wreck, they were walking to and from the ship or the wreck to gather food and whatever else.
Yeah.
So these are from the diaries, or from researching the diaries, worked out that it couldn't have been a K out to sea, because you're not going to walk.
Yeah. Logs and stuff, I suppose.
And that's how they found it. They started looking around. And I'll tell you what, 250 years later, or 200 odd years later, they salvaged all the cannon and, as Davy said, the gold coins,
ingots,
the ingots and whatever else they found.
Yeah.
But I remember Norbert Clarkus saying to me one day on the island, and just for what it's worth, after going with the Rodocanachis 5 or 6 times, you as a lover of fishing, you say, I'm going to get onto this island one day. And it was very difficult to get onto the island. It was a closed book. Until one day I got a phone call to say, do you want to come to Bird Island to help tag sharks? And I said, I'm on the next aeroplane. We were living in Durban.
Okay.
And the following morning I was on Bird Island.
Yeah.
And my first cast on Bird Island, I caught a red steenbris. Which is something that used to be caught quite prolifically in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
But not so much anymore. Is it on
today
on the red list today for you can't, you don't want to eat it in the restaurants because it's
but along with that, you go and spend a week on the island, and we then started making a documentary, which is where quite a bit of this footage comes from.
Okay.
And you live there for a week, 8, 9, 10 days.
Yeah.
And you read there are quite a lot of books in, like, I wouldn't say a library on the island, but in like in bookshelves. Yeah. And you're there for a week, maybe 8 or 9 days, and you read all this stuff, and you read about the ghosts of Bird Island. You read about the history of Bird Island. Yeah. And I mean, the lighthouse. Yeah. Built in 1852 was a wooden structure. The lightkeeper would then send messages back to his boss in Port Elizabeth, saying life is unbearable on this island. The gannets keep flying into the lighthouse and breaking the windows. Oh, then I'll tell you a lovely story about Bird Island. Yeah. In the 1920s, the lightkeeper, he was about the 7th or 8th lightkeeper on the island since the first lighthouse was built in 1852. Yeah. So he writes back to his boss, and by the 1920s, a homing pigeon was taking the messages to and from Port Elizabeth.
Like old Shane, Shane, our BLG guy that does the.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they bought these 7 homing pigeons for £3 or whatever, and that's how. In fact, that's how the lightkeepers knew that the First World War had stopped.
Yeah.
Or ended.
Okay. Right.
The homing pigeon took a message on its leg,
Jeez.
flew to Bird Island in 1918.
Okay.
But in the 1920s, there was a particular lightkeeper who kept moaning about the ghosts. He was having a lot of paranormal activity.
Oh my word.
So fast forward to 2001, we rock up on the island, and there are 2 colored guys there, lovely oaks, really lovely guys. They're the lighthouse oaks. And I happened to fish with the 2 oaks one afternoon on the island from the jetty there in what we call Great White Alley.
That was coming now.
We started talking, and I mean, I didn't know them from a bar of soap. They were 2 very lovely oaks. And we struck up a conversation, and I said to them, "Tell me now, are there ghosts on the island?" Oak looked at me and said, "What's a cat radio?" So I said, "I've read this book." And apparently they were living there. They worked. They were like lighthouse maintenance.
Okay.
They were there for like a month, 6 weeks. And I said, "I've read this book about the ghosts in the lighthouse." Yeah, cock. So anyway, I explained to them what I'd read. And I said, in the 1920s, the lightkeeper here used to send messages to his boss talking about the ghosts. And he said, "Yeah, die enige spook hier was die spoken diesel." Inferring that particular lighthouse keeper was obviously on the top.
Doing some rum.
I promise you.
I think so.
I buckled on. I was standing on the jetty. I absolutely buckled. Yeah, Rani. The enigste spook hier is die spoken diesel. But you know, having said that, I got this call. I was desperate to get onto this island, and that was triggered by going there with the Rodocanachi family.
Okay.
And
so you guys
we
know
eventually got on there.
Know that island well, then?
Yep. Been there many times.
To get onto the island is the difficulty. And
is there a jetty or something, right?
There are 2 jetties. It's every fisherman's dream, and I'm grateful for the fact we try to make a documentary. And we were doing really well until the Animal Planet pulled out on DSTV, and Mnet said, "Well, we are here as well." But the footage that Gary's shown tonight is largely from the documentary we were making. And, you know, Gary, if I may just ask in conclusion, just to show a little bit about what the scientists do here. The Gannets and the late Dr. Norbert Klages, who became a very good friend of mine, and Dr. Malcolm Smale.
Let's see if it works.
These guys, like, just for...
During the 18th and 19th centuries, many of our marine birds were subjected to periods of intense exploitation. The Cape Gannet, for instance, is one of South Africa's most studied seabirds today. But during the guano harvesting era, and prior to the advent of marine protection programs, their future too lay in the balance, and a rather precarious one at that.
Okay, so I think he's got another video of Norbert. Let's have a squiz.
Gannets are unique to Southern Africa, or Cape Gannets, let's rather say, are unique to Southern Africa. They occur in 6 gannet trees. 3 are situated in Namibia, but those gannet trees in Namibia are not doing very well. There has been too much overfishing on that part of the African coastline, and gannets have declined badly along here. In South Africa, in contrast, gannets are doing very well, thank you. It's probably most easily explained because our pelagic fish stocks are in a good state of health. That is sardine and anchovy, which is the main food of the gannets.
Yeah, there we go. Another one. Here we go. Oh, click it one more time. If you were.
The biggest single factor in curtailing the growth of the colony, and an event that nearly put paid to the gannets, was the harvesting of bird droppings called guano. Ornithologist Dr. Norbert Klagers is responsible for many of South Africa's marine birds.
People moved onto this island and began to harvest what they called the white gold. It made them rich men overnight. And large, thick deposits of guano had accumulated here on the island. Eventually it got all scraped away. And as a result, the gannetry here behind us almost became cup-shaped. And then during rain, water would accumulate there, and that in turn affected the breeding success of the gannets, so gannet numbers were declining. There was people all over the show. There was workers working the guano. There was even a little railway line on this island, and this made it impossible for the other birds to breed successfully. And it was only when the guano scraping ended that in the past 20 years or so that the gannets and the penguins and the roseate terns have recovered and are now well on their way of attaining the former levels that they used to have.
Yeah, it's lovely to see so many birds.
Yeah.
And that was a couple of years ago.
That was 20 years ago.
So that's the, I wish I really just hope that we can sort out this bunkering story and get the and the fishing. I suppose the fishing is a big part. If they protect those areas,
Sure,
it will grow. It will grow.
I think the beauty of the place is it was difficult to get on there 20 years ago. It was just as difficult to get on there a week ago.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to actually ask Gary, just to conclude, the main reason why we went there was to help Malcolm Smale tag sharks, because we're fishermen.
All right.
And we're conservation minded, much like all of us are.
Yeah.
And let me tell you this, not everybody enjoys this type of thing.
Yeah.
But this to me is like going to the Monaco Grand Prix, or going to Lord's Cricket Ground.
Yes.
In fact, this is better than going to Lord's or Monaco.
For you, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you don't see this very often.
Yeah.
And this began, I was on an aeroplane in early September, and we took off over Algoa Bay, turned left, going to Johannesburg.
Yeah.
And I was in the aisle seat. There was the husband sitting in the middle and his wife here. And 3 minutes after takeoff, I heard the woman say at 6:10 in the morning, better say, "Oh, look, there's Bird Island."
Yeah.
Oh, geez, Bird Island's moved again. People don't know about Bird Island.
Yeah.
And really, it's
right here on our doorstep, beautiful. And I know.
I think what Lloyd was also trying to say, and
Yeah.
what we're all trying to say, is there's that symbiosis.
Yeah.
If the fish are good, the birds are good.
Yeah.
And the sad reality here, corporate South Africa, and I'm not going to point a finger at any particular corporate, but corporate South Africa come out with this, yes, we're behind conservation. Let me tell you something, go knock on their door and ask them to fund your documentary or a documentary. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, it's also money, and also you can't pinpoint one. You see, that's the whole issue.
But it is vital.
So it is up to the consumer in the end to say, listen, we don't want to buy this, we want to buy that. Because that will change
100%.
in the thing.
But it is vital that all these things are looked after.
Yeah.
And just to give you an example, in concluding,
Yes.
Cape Recife. We used to wade out there for mussel cracker, and you could wade quite comfortably without slipping and falling, etc., etc. We left Port Elizabeth and came back 3 years later. When fishing at Cape Recife, you couldn't wade there. You couldn't keep your footing. You were slipping, falling, tripping. And
Fish.
No. Over the bottom.
The bottoms.
What the stuff is going on here? I mean, I used to wade you quite comfortably, never fall, never trip. And I thought, geez, I'm not pissed.
Yeah.
And I bumped into Professor Peter Brits.
Yeah.
And he said the problem there is the perlman had been taken out. And as a result of that, the seaweed has been allowed to proliferate.
Okay.
So the perlman's job in the ocean is to look after the seaweed, control the seaweed. No perlman at Cape Recife, all sent to China. The seaweed had proliferated.
Okay.
And
everything affects each other, you know. So
as Sean Thompson said, "Hoy the pebble there, the kite starts there." And really, it does. It does, and 60,000 penguins to 3,000.
I know.
There's a problem.
We have to keep on pushing for that.
Correct.
But guys, Malcolm, we have a video. There was a video of Malcolm. It's a concluding video.
The reason why we got into the island, I beg your pardon, the reason why we got into the island was to help the scientists tag the fish. Okay. So if I may ask you, just show the oak catching the yellowtail and then going into Malcolm Smale, and then we're done.
Yeah.
So we would go to the island to help the scientists. Okay. That's effectively, we volunteer to help them.
Let's have a look.
The waters surrounding Bird Island are rich in nutrients. In pursuit of these nutrients, an abundance of marine life. Fish and sharks of all shapes and sizes. It is for this reason that Dr. Smale has chosen Bird Island for an important shark research program.
Bird Island is one of the tagging sites we've got for a variety of sharks, predominantly ragged-tooth sharks and gully sharks, but we tag a variety of others too because it's part of a broad-based plan to better understand aging of sharks.
In order to achieve maximum results, Dr. Smale has forged a close working relationship with a small group of conservation-minded anglers. Popular South African angler Ricky Jacobs realizes the importance of protecting and conserving our rapidly declining fish stocks.
Might just cut me off. It's like a raggy. Yeah, I think it's a raggy. That's what it feels like. That's a good one. Yeah, I'll try and pull him in. Yeah. That's strong. Yeah.
Again, we're back again. So
going back. Place, and it's really it's a fisherman's dream to go there.
Yeah,
more importantly, the reason why that place is in good condition is because it's looked after.
Yeah. The guys are there to they tag, they check back, they make sure that they're checking on what's happening.
This is the tetracycline I'm injecting. I think it's 6 cc's.
And how big do they go?
They don't bigger. It's going into below the cartilage and support the fin to keep it going. Okay, should be fine. Come on, go.
See, it's at a bar it's an old ring.
Just going to put it below the tag, eh? Yeah.
It's like a bar yeah.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. Thank you.
But
so you're talking about the island being protected. You'll recall that after we had this whole permanent poaching epidemic, they actually closed the island off, and you had certain boundaries.
Okay.
And one of the last times that we went there, we went with just on the edge of the boundary to fish. It was just within fishable waters.
Yeah.
And we had a big duck with probably 6 or 7 armed guys, R4s, racing out to us, riding around us, making sure that we were just outside the levels. So that sort of protection works.
It's good.
That's what keeps it safe. And if we can do that sort of monitoring in other protected areas,
Correct.
Well, good to know. Good to know the guys are around. You know, they need to protect our areas. But guys, thank you so much, man. Yes, Bird Island. I learned a lot about Bird Island tonight for sure. And
Now you know where it is.
Spice, thank you so much. And Ray,
good to
thank
see
you
you.
for spending some time with us.
Nice to see
Thank you
you.
to our sponsors.
Thank
to
you,
Spar.
Gary and Genevieve.
Thank you to Gary for doing our tech here, and then Sovereign and Fitch and Leeds as well as our sponsor Spa. And join us next week. Next week is we're gonna have
Hazy Shades.
Oh yes, it's the Ken J. Larkin is unfortunately his health is not good, and they are having the whole band is having a big bash at the Music Kitchen, and we're going to speak to the Ken J. Larkin band and all the musos of that era next week as well. So if you're into the oldies music, we into it next week in a big way. You know, I'm all in the studio. Thank you for joining us on Gino Spot, and we'll see you next Tuesday, 6:30. We're in. All right, we're going to play out with the video as well.
Science has revealed that the small rocky outcrop, measuring no more than 2 miles in circumference, has for centuries provided an ideal home for a myriad of life forms.
Relax, sit down, coming out of PE town. Drink, find a shot, never mind your liver, get to Gino Spot. Gino Spot! Get to Gino Spot. Gino Spot! Have a laugh, have a giggle, and exercise your middle, have a Gino shot.